The easiest version of this story has a villain. My mother tears the letter. The ambitious young person is crushed. Injustice, obstacles overcome, triumph. Credits roll. I'm not going to tell you that version. Because it's not true, and because I think the true version is more interesting and more useful than the easy one. My mother was not a villain. She was a person who loved me in the only way she knew how, in a moment of pure terror, and made a decision that cost us both something real. Today, I want to talk about what happens when you stop casting the people who hurt you as villains, not for their sake, for yours. Let me tell you who my mother actually was on the day she tore that letter. She was a woman who had come to this country at 24 with 2 suitcases and no English. Who had worked double shifts for 12 years. Who had watched her own siblings scatter, one to another city, one to another country, and had seen how distance changes love, how it makes it thinner, how the phone calls get shorter and the visits less frequent, until one day you realize you're strangers who share a bloodline. She was a woman who had built everything she had around nearness, around the table, around the meal. And I was sitting in front of her telling her I was going to go be brilliant somewhere else. The letter was the symbol of everything she was afraid of. She didn't tear my future. She tore the symbol of her own terror. That's a crucial distinction, because if you misread the action, if you say she tore my future, then the story you tell is about your loss, and that story, while true, ends in bitterness. But if you read the action accurately, she tore the symbol of her terror, then the story becomes something more interesting. It becomes, how do people love badly, and what do we do about that? Here's what happens when you keep someone as a villain in your story. You freeze them. You make them permanent. The person who did this to me is a static character. They have no interiority, no growth, no possibility of change. And that freezing doesn't only apply to them, it applies to you. Because as long as my mother was the villain, I was the victim. And as long as I was the victim, the story was about what happened to me, not about what I chose to do. Victim narratives have a place. They're true. Often, the harm is real. But you cannot build a life in a victim narrative. You can live there for a while. You cannot build there. The moment I was able to see my mother as a full human being, afraid, limited, doing her best with what she had, was the moment I was able to see myself as a protagonist again, and protagonists make choices. I want to be clear about what I'm not saying. Because this idea gets misused, I am not saying forgive and forget. I am not saying what your mother, father, family, or anyone who hurt you did was okay. I am not saying you owe anyone absolution they haven't worked for. I'm saying the story you tell about what happened has consequences for your life, not theirs. My mother never apologized. We never had the conversation. She sat at my niece's send-off dinner and said, "You're a good man," and I believe she meant it as an apology, and I chose to receive it as one. Was that fair? Probably not, strictly speaking. Was it better for my life than continuing to wait for a formal acknowledgement? Yes, absolutely yes. The refrain is not about them. It's about you choosing the story that lets you build. What I built, once I stopped needing my mother to be the villain, was this. A relationship with her that is real, imperfect, and warm. We talk twice a week. She asks about my work and doesn't fully understand it, and she tells me about the neighbors, and I listen, and this is love in its ordinary form. A relationship with my niece Amara that is built on presence and investment, 6 years of Saturday math, a scholarship searching, of honest conversations about ambition and fear. A college fund that paid out last August, in full, on the day Amara left for school. The question I want to leave you with is this: who in your story is currently playing the villain? And what are they costing you, not as a character in their own life, but as a fixed point in yours? Because every villain you maintain is a room of your house you can't use. A part of your story you can't write forward from. My mother is not a villain. She's a woman who was afraid, and then she got older, and now she makes the big meal when something matters, and I am not a victim. I'm someone who took a torn letter and 7 years, a lot of Tuesday afternoons, and one college fund later turned it into a door that stayed open. You can do that too. Whatever letter got torn in your life, whatever the moment was where someone's fear became your loss, you are not required to stay in that moment. You are not required to keep them frozen there either. Let them be human. Let yourself be the protagonist. And then go build something with what's left. I'll see you next week.